It may be hard to believe, but it's actually a new year. That means 12 more months of games we can hope to release that we're supposed to release in years before, but constantly keep being pushed forward because of plenty of things happening in the world. Of course, also new titles that we've heard about that we're excited to hear about. So we're going to list off a whole bunch of games that we're excited to hopefully come out in the year of 2022.
Yes, disclaimer, strong disclaimer. Many of these games were supposed to release last year. Some of them were supposed to release 2 or 3 years ago, and many of them will probably still not come out this year.
That's right. So if you've watched our previous preview videos, you're going to see some repeats.
Yeah, there's some familiar faces, but nonetheless, it's a pretty big selection of games that we're excited about that we're hoping, fingers crossed, will make it out sometime at retail this year.
And I will say, at the very least, with this list of games, I think there is a trend of something rhyming with the word "ampagne."
A lot of alcoholic games, I think, this year.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to get right into it. We're just listing all these games. We'll briefly cover some of the details, and they're going to be in alphabetical order by title. That's it. Nothing fancy.
Not our most excited because we'll actually want to play them before we do that.
That's right.
Though we have played some.
Some of these we've played already in some form or another. All right, so kicking it off, we're starting off with the numbers. Six Siege, the board game, based off Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege series. This is a tactical game where you're moving minis around a map, and one team is trying to rescue a hostage. The other team is trying to stop them from rescuing that hostage. This is one of those games we actually got to play a little bit of, at least a demo version, and it's a big tactical miniatures game. And if you like that kind of thing, if you like that series, there's one to look for. Next, another number, the next number, in fact, in sequential order, the Seventh Citadel. This is the sequel to the Seventh Continent, which is one of our favorite games of all time. A big campaign game which you can play single player or with more players. Big, sprawling, puzzle-solving narrative with a ton of things going on in it.
You know, we should put a little clock just counting every time we use the word campaign.
It'll get, that's what it was. I wasn't sure if it was champagne before. Okay. Next, we have Aegis, the second season. This is Aegis combining robots. Of course, we're fans of the original game. It's a competitive robot battling game inspired by old anime robot shows, and there's all kinds of different combos you can do. You're, again, tactically moving around a board and using different powered robots and fusing them together to fight each other. Eon Trespass Odyssey is on its way. This is, yes, you better believe it, a narrative campaign-driven game in which you are going to be working together. It's cooperative. There's lots of minis. You are trying to discover new secrets, new worlds. This one I feel like has been talked about for a while. I think it was pretty big on Kickstarter, anticipated.
Yeah, if you didn't hear about this, one thing that I remember during the Kickstarter that was interesting was they actually had a pledge level. It was pretty much called like the trial or demo. I can't remember exactly. It pretty much give you like a little taste of how this game played. So if you weren't sure at the time, you could pledge at this level so you could play it. If you like the mechanics, maybe go all in later on. So it's definitely something I'm curious when this comes out, how well that will be received, because that could be an interesting thing for more of these larger campaigns, because usually larger means heavy miniatures, story, and in essence, a smaller kit for you to try before you buy might seem like a more interesting option for a lot of people.
Something you might want to try, especially in light of the next game we'll talk about, which is Archaeos. At least that's how I'm going to pronounce it. Archaeos or something like that. This one's Egyptian themed, and I know we've been talking about this one for a little while now. And yes, it's another narrative campaign game. This time you're all cooperative. You're all explorers going through ancient Egyptian temples and making cool discoveries. And this one did seem like many of the ones on our list do, it seems to have some interesting twists and turns to that formula.
Now, the next one on our list is actually some people have had the chance that get and play in 2021. In fact, one of the reasons we're bringing it up because it made some people's 2021 top game. But for a lot of others, this is going to be the year we get the chance to try it out, and that is Ark Nova. This seems to be this really interesting game about building the zoo and using your cards in different ways to try to make sure the zoo is habitable and make sure the animals work together. It was definitely a game that I would say flew under the radar in 2021, but 2022, I have a feeling that's when it's going to return on a lot of lists at the end of the year. Then we have Artisans of Splendor Vale, And you guessed it, campaign game. But this is from Renegade Game Studios and has this unique art style. Also, these really cool looking and unique characters that I think a lot of people are going to be heavily attracted to. Then we have Artia, Pass We Dare Tread. Not only is this a campaign game, this is what they call a green legacy. The idea behind it being it still has a lot of the elements of a legacy game, but once the game is done, not only is it replayable in the sense that we're used to hearing with other legacy games, but you could repackage it so someone else can play it, meaning it's not a one and done game. Then we've got Beast. This is not a campaign game one. This is actually hidden movement, when one player will play as the beast in this forest, the other as the hunters. By themselves, a hunter is definitely weaker than the beast, but together, they might be able to track the beast and take it out before it's too late. Then Beyond Humanity actually has 2 games under that line. There's Beyond Humanity Colonies, which is a campaign game, but using this very unique digital infrastructure and app that is in talking pieces in essence. That was really going to be something, if you ever wondered and enjoyed electronics in your board games, you're going to want to keep an eye out for that one. But if not, don't worry. There's Beyond Humanity's Astro Miners. This is more Euro style game of mining and trying to gather resources and beat other people to deliveries in space, of course.
Both of those are games that we've definitely been anticipating in other years, and it's always like, are they coming out yet?
Yeah.
Are they yet? But not quite yet. Still excited for them.
And then there's Block on the Clock Tower. This has been print and play and stuff, but I think the physical release is finally being manufactured and hopefully coming soon. This is a big trader style game that can fit up to 20 people. So if you love those hidden role games and having a storyteller and trying to find out which one of you is lying, I'm sure this is already on your radar.
Yeah, Blood on the Clock Tower, definitely a very talked about and hyped game for something that doesn't have an official release yet. A lot of the ones you've just talked about, and I'm sure it's a trend we'll keep seeing, is big on Kickstarter. That's nothing new.
I feel like that's not this year. That is board games now.
That's board games now. Big on Kickstarter, campaigns, and minis. It's not a trend that's changing anytime soon. Next up, how about Bullet? That's right, Bullet with a star, not Bullet with a heart. This is from Level 99 Games, and it's a new standalone in their Bullet line. These are games kind of based on old shoot-'em-up style video games.
Bullet hells.
That's right, that's what they call them. But also with this interesting kind of puzzle game style element as you play. We really like the first one. This has a new set of characters with new abilities, and you can like mix and match or play it standalone. Then there's Cantaloupe, Book 2, A Hack of a Plan. If you watched our top 10 list, you know this placed pretty high for both of us. This is the second book in a point-and-click adventure style series of games. This will be the second part of that story, actually. And again, this I think maybe is available somewhere in other parts of the world. There's also a book 3 that's supposed to be coming out, hopefully maybe also this year, but I'm not, in terms of localization, I think it all depends on how fast they get these finished. But
regardless, go hunt down book 1.
Yeah.
I mean, we loved it. We loved it. It's going to be a lot of fun, especially if you are staying home right now for whatever the reason may be. It's going to be great story for you to play through and get excited for the next book.
Yeah, definitely one of the higher, more anticipated games for us.
Does that count as campaign?
I'll sure. Why not? Next is Chai Tea for 2. This is the 2-player version. Actually, it's a solo mode as well of the Chai game where you're playing as people making tea. You're brewing tea. You're growing the stuff you need to get tea going. And this is specifically the 2-player game. I know a lot of people like this one. One I'd like to get the chance to try out soon. Chaosmos is one of those under the radar games that is one of our favorites. That's kind of a hidden gem, I'd say. And there was a new version that was on Kickstarter called The Temple. This is a standalone redone version. It's a sci-fi game where you're all trying to capture the specific card called the Ovoid, and you're maybe forming temporary alliances. You're moving around with your very unique alien powers. It's got a lot going on, and when we played the prototype of this new version, and I really liked it. I know that the designer is having issues. We've talked to him about shipping. Like everyone's having issues with shipping. So this is one of those ones that hopefully will make it this year, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the video for, but if we were going to design our favorite under the radar games, Chaosmos, I think, is if not number 2. And it's one that you really should look out because I have yet to see a game that does something similar to it.
Yeah, so I'm really hoping that takes off and hopefully I get to make more of it. Another one is Crossbows and Catapults from Restoration Games. We'll see them a few times on this list. It's a reworking of an 80s game where you got a bunch of plastic pieces and you're going to be flinging rocks at each other trying to knock down all your different little buildings and locations. What's not to love about that?
In our previous top games of 2021, we talked about how there are a lot of games of like remakes or versions of games that already exist. And this is sort of like that, and that's Cryptids Urban Legends. This is based off the Cryptid line, a game we really do enjoy. But unlike that one, this one's a head-to-head game in terms of one player is actually going to be playing the Cryptid. I enjoy that very much. I cannot wait to play the Mothman and see if you can find me.
I'll see if I can discover your prophecies.
Then we've got the Darkest Dungeon, the board game based off the video game series. This one is based off the video game of the same name. So I'm sure a lot of people will be very excited to get out the digital dungeon and then dive themselves into this dungeon, see what this world has in store for them. Darwin's Journeys up next. In this one, you will follow a path of Darwin looking for new species and any signs of evolution, but instead of just contributing to the vast knowledge of science, you also need to win. So of course, you're going to try to submit these to get points and prove you are the best scientist. Then we have Dead Reckoning. This one we actually previewed a while back from AEG. This is a really cool pirate game using a similar mechanic of card crafting we've seen from a couple other AEG games. It's definitely had this cool feeling and building up your pirate ship in a very unique way that the card crafting system is able to offer. Then Decorum is a really interesting one. In this one, you are in essence like roommates and you are trying to work together to decorate and build up the place. But of course, you'll have secret desires. If anything, this almost reminds me of
Fog of Love.
Fog of Love, thank you. In which you sort of have to work together, but also be selfish. I get it's almost what I feel like is really semi-cooperative.
Yes, that one was really interesting. I loved the look of it and the theme of it. Very unique.
It also had a sort of campaign style when you're unlocking more and more things going on there, but not, I guess, the usual campaign when we use that of like Chapter 1.
No, yeah, there's like envelopes. You'll be unlocking new areas and furniture you can decorate with and stuff like that. Yeah, that one seemed really cool and novel. Again, if you like more video games in your board games, we've got Divinity Original Sin, the board game, role-playing game. We got to try this one out. It has some really unique mechanics in terms of implementing narrative, as well as the way you can, in combat, implement status effects that may help other players. So maybe you throw some oil down and someone else lights that oil on fire, for instance. So some really neat types of combos and moves you can do cooperatively in that game. Dominion has another new expansion because of course it does. I believe this is their 14th expansion. And
now, did you actually look that up or are you just saying random?
No, I mean, I read it.
Okay.
I read it. Dominion Allies is the name of this one. It's more cards. This time you got allies. There's like barbarians. It's Dominion. You've got more Dominion. Earthborn Rangers. This is maybe for people who have moved on from Dominion. They want the new cool kind of games. Earthborn Rangers was on Kickstarter, and it's an expandable card game, also with a narrative campaign element. But this one is very open-ended. I believe there was no win-loss scenario in these games. Instead, what you did would have an impact on the world and your choices determine how the story carries on going forward. And there's a big theme of like nature and fighting off predators and a lot of really cool stuff in that one.
And not just in the actual story of the game, but also how it's made. It's really designed to be green, and even the story itself is reflected not to make us like focus on how terrible things, but like how we can push beyond and hopefully make things maybe the future a little bit more brighter for you.
Let's hope. Next is the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, the adventure game. So you have Skyrim, the board game. It's a big, again, cooperative RPG where you are running around the board, solving different quests, going into dungeons, emulating the gameplay style of of the Skyrim video game. We also got to try this one out, and just with our brief time in that first chapter, we really enjoyed it. And there's a lot of replay value and different paths you can choose in this one.
Definitely check it out and see some of the poor decisions I make.
Yeah. And then there's Endless Winter, Paleo Americans. This one is all about, the ancient cavemen that you are trying to build up. You're trying to gather your tribe and help them survive, get food, all that kind of stuff. This is another one of those hybrid worker placement deck building games that everybody loves. And it looks like has a lot of cool stuff going for it. Not the least of which is the art. Same artist who did like the Valeria series and all the like West Kingdom games. Mm-hmm. So really cool look to it.
Europa Universalis, The Price of Power is one of the games that have appeared on our list multiple times since we first saw it back at Gen Con. So for all you 4X players out there, hopefully this will be the year you get to try it out. Then we've got The Fall of the Mountain King. This is actually a prequel to the game in which you explain why the Mountain King needs to reclaim the mountain in the first place. So hopefully you can help the trolls fend off the gnomes with dignity. Then we've got Familiar Tales. This is a story game from Plaid Hat Games in which you have been entrusted with a young child and you'll be making decisions, trying to work together, and depending how the child reacts to you in the world, as they grow up, their personality will change with you. So if you're like us and really love story mechanics and getting into a world, this is one you're probably going to be very excited to try out.
I think this one also uses an app, if I recall correctly. Maybe I'm wrong, but I know it uses like a storybook style board you play through. And
I mean, it has, I think, everything we like.
Yeah, it sounds, I love the concept of it. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah. And this next one is another one that I'm excited about, and that's Flamecraft, because this is all about dragons, except you're in a fun little village. So you're building that up with different shops. And it's so cute. I just love it. And then Foundations of Rome. This was a Kickstarter exclusive game. So if you didn't back it then, as far as I know, you're going to have to secondary market, and hopefully it won't be too bad, but a huge miniatures game and so much crazy stuff going on from Arcane Wonders. And I guess that makes sense for a big city such as Rome.
Yeah, like this is a literally huge minis game. Like the minis are big.
No, I think the box does classify as a weapon.
Yeah, it's if you can lift it, that is.
Speaking of later games that are on this list.
Yeah, that's right. Next is probably, if you had to pick one that is the most anticipated from the community at large, it's Frosthaven. And again, it doesn't really bear repeating at this point, but this was supposed to come out last year. Maybe it'll come out this year. Everything's up in the air. But sequel to Gloomhaven, honestly, I don't need to say anything more about it, I don't think. You know what this game is. We're excited to see what the changes are like from the first Gloomhaven. Everybody's got this on their radar.
I will say for a bonus, though, those who are disappointed with the fact that it was only just cardboard and minis for the players, do keep an eye out. They will at some point release a crowdfunding for actual minis we've talked about a little bit. So that's going to be pretty cool. Yep. In particular, I'm happy if I can just get some of those familiars.
Yeah, that'll be cool to see. Continuing the trend of video games adapted to board games.
And cold.
And being cold. We now have Frostpunk, the board game. Again, it's another cooperative title in which you're trying to bring together your city in a frigid wasteland, and you're going to have to collect resources and make some tough choices as to how you help your people survive. Very interesting game. It kind of has morality involved as well as deep Euro mechanics. Mm-hmm. Opposite end of that, much lighter type of game, Hair of the Dog, one we're really excited about from Cherry Picked Games, who we love. This is a game where you're at a bar with dogs and your goal is to pet all the dogs that you can. And you are going around, it's kind of a deduction game, you're trying to figure out what these dogs like. You give them treats, you give them biscuits, and they'll let you pet them. Gotta love that. Adorable.
It's dogs. I love it.
We're in. Then we're going right back to the deep end with Hell, The Last Saga. That's Hel. This is one of these giant miniatures games. It's Vikings. It's again, narrative campaign. It's combat, tactics, Euro-style game, but with some kind of more thematic elements, heavily thematic elements involved in it. It's one of those games. And then Human Punishment, The Beginning. This one we got to preview. It's a hidden traitor game in a kind of a cyberpunk setting, a big, sprawling, complicated game in the vein of something like Battlestar Galactica or now Unfathomable. So if you are into that sort of heavy experience, but with, mechs and other cool cyberpunk stuff going on, that's Human Punishment, The Beginning.
Now we're going to go to an interesting expansion for a game that we enjoy, and that's Imperial Settlers, Empires of the North, Wrath of the Lighthouse. Yes, that's a lot of words there. But this is a sort of campaign game, but it's also got a lot of solo elements, and it's something I'm very curious about and see how that actually plays. Once again, Portal, I'm very excited to see all the stuff they have, and this is definitely something I think a really cool twist on the Empires of North game style.
Yeah, I'm curious to see because it's not just like new factions that you can now play with. Yeah, there's some different stuff going on.
Then we've got ISS Vanguard. This is from Awakened Realms, another big, heavy campaign, but this time we're going to space. We haven't tried this one out, but we played plenty of other Awakened Realms games, so if you really like those games that has a lot in the box and especially minis too, it's definitely one for you to keep an eye out on.
They tend to do it well.
And they're also hard to come by after a while, so that's really the bigger challenge.
Yeah.
Then we've got John Company 2nd Edition. This game is actually from the same creator as Root, but not part of Leader Games, because the title has more than 4 letters.
That's the giveaway.
But this is a new edition, so of course things are made a bit tighter, clearer, and better components, so a great way to pick up the game again. Then this is one that is probably rivals for me at least the most excited game, and that's Jurassic World: The Legacy of Isla Nublar. This comes from Funko Games, and it's just a legacy campaign game, but it's Jurassic World, and you are starting from when the park's first inception. We had a video taking a look at this back for PAX Unplugged, so you can watch that for more, but yeah, I want to play it.
Yeah, we all do, very much.
Then we've got Key to the Kingdom. This is from Restoration Games. It's actually based on an older title in which you are going to try to gather the keys around this board, but the board actually folds open and close, and if you get closed on you and not in the holes or sort of like portals, that's going to cause some trouble for you. I mean, Restoration Games constantly hits it out of the park, and I love how they keep bringing back these old games, and not just in like nostalgic reasons, because they give it new skins and change mechanics where if you didn't know about the game, you'll still be like, yeah, that's a good game.
Yeah, they're doing some really cool stuff. All the games you just mentioned, I'm really excited about. Jurassic World obviously is huge. John Company, I think, is a fascinating game that I've heard is very, it's kind of polarizing, which maybe I guess a lot of his designs are, that it's like got an anti-capitalist theme. And I really want to try it.
You're saying Hasbro's going to pick it up and then make it the most pro-capitalist thing ever.
Maybe they will. But yeah, I'm dying to try that one out. Fantasy Flight is putting out their next Keyforge set, Winds of Exchange. This will be a big one to anticipate because it's been a while between Keyforge releases. If you don't know, there were all these issues where their algorithm was
may not.
I'll just say mysteriously broken. And so there's been a bit of a delay. So hopefully this one will come out soon.
I'm really curious to see if when it comes out, if it's just going to be like same as, following the path as if the algorithm didn't disappear or whatever may happen, or if they're gonna be like, since we had to remake it, we've made these new changes that change the way cards come out and stuff. So it's definitely something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, who knows what Keyforge will be like this year. Marvel Legendary specifically is one of our favorite series, and they're gonna have more expansions coming out this year, starting with Messiah Complex, which is an X-Men themed. I know they also have a Black Panther one that's coming out that they've been showing off a little bit. So more Legendary cards. They're bringing back more of those old keywords, more stuff that we like. Legends of Sleepy Hollow. Speaking of games that we've been talking about for a long time.
Yeah, we did a video for that. I remember back when I didn't even have this.
Well, that wasn't that long ago, but yeah.
I think it was.
No, you just it's so comfortable you feel like you've had it forever. I still remember the day there was no beard. Anyway, Legends of Sleepy Hollow, it's based on that story, and yes, it's a narrative cooperative campaign game, but we thought it was pretty cool. You're playing through a sort of an adaptation that plays with that mythology, that folklore, whatever you want to call it at this point, in some cool different ways. Next, there's The Light in the Mist. This is a really unique puzzle game that uses these tarot cards that may not look like they have puzzles at first glance, but as you play, you'll discover things about them that will lead you to story passages and help you uncover all kinds of mysteries and answers and secrets and such.
We did a preview video for this one, and obviously we didn't show too much there because we don't want to ever spoil things like this, especially when as in this game, we had a lot of fun actually playing it and trying to solve these puzzles, because a lot of those puzzles may have more than one answer.
That's true. There's some open-ended stuff in there. Now, another game that we are fans of is Lock Up from Thunderworks Games. This is part of their role player series, and there's an expansion that should be coming out for not too long, shortly, I believe, called Breakout. This is a worker placement game in a prison, a fantasy prison. You're all different fantasy creatures, and you're trying to group your people, place them in the right spots. And this new expansion, of course, adds extra spaces, extra characters to play as, new items, and things like that.
Long shot, the dice game's hopefully not a long ways away. This is a roll and write game involving horse races that we did a video for. Really clever, because it's not simply about rolling about your horse, but really making bets and maybe buying ownership of certain things and trying to hopefully bet on the right horse. Then Lord of the Rings, the card game LCG, will be returning in a new revised core set. This will hopefully come out this year, and maybe we'll get more news of the future for the Lord of the Rings set. Now, judging by the Arkham card game, I imagine we're going to start seeing things like that, which personally, after receiving the first new box set, I guess, for me, I didn't buy the original core revised, I think is a much better way to play these LCGs. We don't need the packs anymore. Those boxes are nice.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about the Lord of the Rings revised as someone who has never played it. The idea of like, oh, I can jump in and it's like a nice jumping on point.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious about it.
Speaking of card games, Marvel champions the card game as the Sinister Motives expansion. This is for all the Spider-Man fans out there. This is where Spider-Ghost or Spider-Gwen.
Ghost Spider.
Ghost Spider is the official.
I believe that's what it is, yeah.
And Miles Morales' Spider-Man are going to guest star up against the Sinister Six. So really cool, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very excited to try them out. Then we've got sticking with Marvel Dice Thrones is the Marvel version of Dice Throne, which a game that has slipped by us, the original one. So maybe this is the one how we get into it by playing with the Marvel characters.
Mm-hmm. Could be. Yeah, everyone seems to like it. It's an interesting kind of like head-to-head dice combat game.
Then Maw Peak is a head-to-head game, but asymmetrical. One person will be playing as a sort of Titan-like creature, while the others will play as villagers fighting it. Very Shadow of the Colossus vibes there. We've played I don't know if it's a prequel, just standalone game that came before it's a lot of fun and really cool, and I'm really curious to see how this one comes out and how it meshes with that standalone.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think that the storyline does continue in some form lightly. It's not like a narrative game or anything, but I think the lore does change.
That's when the villagers decide to combat them with their own mechs.
Maybe that's the next one. I don't know. But yeah, that's a really neat two-player asymmetrical game. Another one from AEG is Meeples Monsters. This one has you playing with literal meeples in the world of this game. Their enemies are things that are going to stop them, like glue and chainsaws or things.
Termites.
Yeah, termites. Enemies of wood in general. And you are placing these meeples, which are workers, but there's a little more to it than that. There's interesting ways you can affect what types of options you have on the board. And of course, you're going to be facing off against some of those enemies in combat. Mega Man is getting a new game, Mega Man Adventures from Blacklist Games, and it's another one based on that video game series where you're going to have your own little Mega Mans running around, and you can try to fight those bosses, get power-ups, and try to defeat them in the correct order, just like the video games do. We'll see if this one is more or less successful than any other Mega Man games that have been released before. We have Merchants of the Dark Road coming up. This is one that I'm pretty curious about. I feel like this one also is one of those did real well on Kickstarter games. The premise is that you are the merchants selling the cool gear and potions and things to the actual adventuring heroes in kind of a fantasy world. Cool premise, and it sounds like it has some deep Euro style kind of gameplay to it.
I can't wait to buy equipment from the heroes for cheap and then sell it at a huge markup.
That's how you do it, man. That's the way to go. Now, we've got another real big entry in a big series, Midara, Unintentional Malum. Act 1 came out a couple years back. We do have Act 2 and I believe Act 3 on the horizon. I don't know if both of them will make it this year, but I think that's what, at least according to Board Game Geek, what they're planning or trying to do. Another big dungeon crawl game. We were fans of the original, so I think it's going to be more of that if you like that.
Yeah, also, at least in my mind, the first two, now with Descent doing of this is just Act 1.
That's right.
You thought you bought a big box that has the entire story? No.
It's only you're only scratching the surface. There's more to see. Now, Monster Hunter World is getting its own board game from Steamforged Games, the series in which, of course, you're going out, gearing up, getting cool weapons and power-ups, and going out to face off against giant monsters. We have played the video game a ton in the past, so it'll be interesting to see how this version works. Steamforged, I think, can be a little hit or miss with a lot of people, but this is a big franchise.
I'm pretty excited for this one because back when we played the Dark Souls game, what we didn't like was all the grinding and more of the little fights that happened beforehand, but the boss battles we found much more interesting. And if you've ever played Monster Hunter, any of the games, they're pretty much just boss battles. So
yes.
I think we're going to pretty much cut out the fat.
The boss battles are the grinding in Monster Hunter.
But we're going to cut out like the fat of maybe some of the other things that we didn't like and see more of the tactical decisions and get the grinding there so we don't have to feel too much going on.
Yeah, hopefully.
But moving on, we've got My City Rollin' Right based on the My City game, which was actually a legacy game. Definitely, I think, of most legacy games out there, the most friendly one to maybe families or newcomers.
It was nominated for Spiel des Jahres, right?
And didn't it make your list?
Yeah, it was in my top 10 that year.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot. Mm-hmm.
So I'm really curious to see how this one plays out as well. And if you enjoy that, definitely check out the legacy one if you've never played one, because that will be at least a bit kinder to you. And then My Father's Work is a really cool, interesting one in which you play through generations of mad scientists and you read your parents' journal and see what goes on and how the village reacts to you. So I'm really curious to see, because this seems to be a kind of competitive game, but like it still feels so heavy. It's not campaigny, I think, from the way you described, but more like just the story's just so much still part of it. You know how much we love narrative being a
that needs to be in a new Animaniacs. We're a little campaigny. I don't know.
Oh.
Continue.
A little bit later for that one. Namiji is it's almost like the spiritual successor to Tokaido, in which you are fishing boats this time, going around a path during the fishing season, gathering up catapult points. I mean, this is going to be one of those ones that's just beautiful to sit on the table. So definitely check this one out. And like I said, Tokaido, that's the big favorite of mine. Now and Never will have you reclaiming your ancestral home and hopefully guiding villagers back. But beware, there are plenty of monsters around and they're still going to put up a fight. Now, this has a regular game mode and a story mode in which you'll be able to make decisions and learn more about the world itself.
Yeah, this is from Red Raven Games. It's the next entry in their series of like Near and Far and Above and Below. And I just played a little bit of Near and Far. That's the one I played. Their names, they're going to get confusing, I think, at a certain point. But I'm really interested to see always what these different games do.
Then we've got Oathsworn, Into the Deepwood. This is another campaign game that's been on our list multiple times, but it's going to be worth it. It is this really cool game in which the way it divides it into more of the story-based decisions than the campaign battles, where there's going to be all these cool, like almost destroying the board that could change the way you found out. A lot of really a bit more interesting. And it's a darker world, but still some interesting takes on our usual elves, dwarves, and whatnot. This is one that we actually got to try out videos, and we will be maybe making an appearance in the game when it appears.
Yeah, we got to guest star some promo cards in this one, and yeah, it's one of those games that we've been hoping would come out for at least I know last year and probably the year before that. We've been anticipating it, but there's a lot of these big campaign games, but that one, I mean, because we knew about it for so long, it feels like that's taking priority in my brain.
By the way, let this also be known: if you do get it and play with us, feel free to sacrifice us. I'm totally fine with being used as a meat shield.
Yeah, that may be a Kickstarter exclusive, but who knows where they'll show up later on.
Then One Deck Galaxy is coming out. This is part of the One Deck line, and if you can probably guess in the title, it's in space. This is one that I know has been pretty enjoyable. Jonathan, I believe you actually got the other One Deck.
Yeah, I liked One Deck Dungeon is the original one, which is fantasy themed. And again, I've been waiting for this, feels like forever, because yeah, it's a good concept. It's a fun, I play it mostly solo. You can do 2-player co-op as well, but just put it in space. Why not? I think it'll work great. Next, we have Paint the Roses from North Star Games. This is themed around Alice in Wonderland, specifically the Queen of Hearts off with their head type of gameplay. And we like North Star Games work a lot, and this looks like a really neat thematic take on that specific section of the Alice in Wonderland story. Then there's Paperback Adventures. Paperback is a game we liked that's sort of like a Scrabble deck building game. You're spelling out words with your cards. Paperback Adventures is specifically a solo version of that experience. So it tweaks some things. It's a little bit different. You're facing off against like thematic literary creatures and stuff like that. But big fan of that series, and I love solo games, so I'm looking forward to this entry. Next, there's a game called Perseverance Castaway Chronicles Episodes 1 and 2. You get both in the first box. This one's got this prehistoric dinosaur/monster theme to it where you're trying to survive on this deadly island. And as the title implies, there's going to be also in episodes 3 and 4. I think it's just 4 and they're going to close it out. But this one looks pretty cool. Primal The Awakening, we talked about Monster Hunter World. Primal The Awakening is kind of like Monster Hunter without the branding, but it's that sort of idea. You are working together to fight off against big, scary dinosaur-like creatures and, tactically moving around them using your skills and upgrading your skills as the game continues. Return to Dark Tower, once again, I'm hoping it finally comes out this year. This is another restoration title, a remake, so to speak, of the original Dark Tower board game. Big electronic tower, skulls falling out of it, moving around the board, making discoveries. Just an awesome looking game that I'm really excited to hopefully finally get to play the official released version of it.
I've heard some rumors that some people are actually receiving them, but I have not confirmed that. So hopefully that means maybe by the end of this month or next, we'll be able to talk more about it.
Yeah, we will see.
Next, we've got Risk Shadow Forces. This is actually the return of Risk Legacy, so to speak, but it's not simply just changing the name. This actually adds a bunch of new mechanics. There's going to be a separate board and much more espionage stuff going on. So really curious to see when the other one was almost more of like, I think a post-apocalyptic world. This feels more like a post, like cyberpunk dystopia world. Like I almost in my mind, I think Metal Gear and like PMCs taking over. So we'll see how that goes and what kind of stickers we'll be placing there. Then we've got Robinson Crusoe, Adventures of the Cursed Island, the Book of Adventures. Yes, that's a very long one. Robinson Crusoe, one of our favorite games out there. And this is just going to add so much more. Does it actually include everything in there, or is this completely new?
Yeah, the Book of Adventures is full on, all the previous scenarios plus new ones. And also going along with this, there is the whole collector's edition that's coming out, which has minis and upgrades and all kinds of junk in it.
Also, check out, I believe they actually have some print and play bonuses that of like some new roles and stuff and art of some of the roles. So keep an eye out on that. We got Rolling Heights from AEG, in which you are building up a city. Literally, you'll actually be getting different meeple with different positions, trying to roll them, make sure they stand right in order to get the resources to build your city up and make it actually sort of like city of skyscrapers. And as they said it, though, one of their favorite things to do afterwards is to pretty much go full kaiju, then destroy it.
Yeah, they said it's great for Instagram because it looks real pretty, and then you can just destroy your city.
I have way too many Godzilla figures to do that with.
Oh, boy, you'll get hours of fun.
And Root's got another expansion, Root the Marauder. So if you didn't have enough Root in your life, you can get more. Of course, the Root itself, the game, this is an asymmetrical war-like game except with cute animal critters. One that we really do enjoy. In general, asymmetrical, especially in war games, I think is a lot of fun because it makes you want to play the other factions, not just because they get a +1 on a different roll, but they really do play differently.
Yeah, I know. I'm very excited for that. Love Root.
Then we have, I think it's Shoal. I don't know if you're supposed to say the letters, but the concept is really cool. It's pretty much this weird dark world, and you have to navigate it by placing light paths around there, trying to get the resources you need to save the city. Just a really interesting sort of definitely different looking game out there.
Pandasaurus has a couple in a row right here, alphabetically, just worked out that way. The first one is Skate Summer. This is a competitive skateboarding game. It's kind of like Tony Hawk. You're trying to visit different locations and pull off skate skateboarding trick combos with your cards. I mean, that sounds awesome to me. Love Tony Hawk, love that kind of idea. And then they have Skull Canyon Ski Fest. This one's a skiing game. You're going to actually be able to gear up at the lodge, get equipment, and practice your skiing. And then you go out on different runs and try to do riskier, more difficult skiing slopes, whatever it is. Obviously, I'm not a skier. I don't know the lingo, but you're trying to score points that way.
I actually got to see a rough version of this, and in fact, I had a discussion saying, like, because they pretty much had pieces but not final art, but there is an abominable snowman. And while they will have fine art, that I argued that the drawing they had looked closer to the old like Windows games,
Ski Free,
and I think that should be like a special bonus.
Yeah, just make Ski Free the game. Why not? Now we have Slay the Spire, the board game, another video game one. Of course, that video game is a deck building game in digital form. So now you have the physical version of that. This is one that I finally bought the video game. Everybody loves it and raves about it. I still haven't played it yet, but I now am planning to actually experience.
Well, isn't that how computer games supposed to work? You buy them, you don't play them.
Just like board games. That's how it all works. That's how it all works. We buy things. We don't play them.
It doesn't take up nearly as much space as long as you don't download them.
That's true. That's true. Next is So You've Been Eaten. This is a really unique game, specifically head-to-head 2-player, although you can play it solo as well, or even with 0 people if you pit the AIs in the game against each other. One player is a big scary monster, and the other player has been eaten and is trying to make their way out. And you're competing with different card combos, another asymmetrical game where you're doing different things at different ends of the board. Very unique and cool. And Soundbox is one I'm looking forward to. This is from Horrible Guild. This is a party game where a bunch of different sounds are going to be made by people, and somebody who has their eyes closed has to try to identify what those sounds were supposed to be. But since it's a Horrible Guild game, if you know the style of game they do, there's also some, gamier elements in there in terms of how you score, but ultimately this sounds like a super goofy, silly game.
I found it funny the way you said, if you know Horrible Guild, because to me, because I know them, I know they just go everywhere. They've got a legacy game that is very strange. They have the 1v all, except usually the one is like the dungeon master, but in that one, you're the one astronaut and everyone else is the bad guys. They just do all these weird kinds of games, and I love them for it.
That's true. They do everything.
Next, we've got The Spill. This is a game when you are working together to clean up a spill, and I do think
an oil spill specifically.
An oil spill. Sorry,
it's not just like milk or something.
That they should be like a junior version. That's what you're before mom returns, the spilt milk. But I do think, along with like Earthborn Rangers, this is a trend we're going to see more of, games like cleaning up the environment, doing stuff, because now I think many of us would say that's a lot scarier than a dragon.
Yeah, only now are we finally realizing that after like 40 years of Anyway,
moving on to more fantasy. Star Wars Jabbas Palace. This is a Star Wars version of Love Letter, but it's got some tweaks, so it's not just a reskin. So for all the Star Wars fans out there, this is a great purchase, and especially, I was going to say stocking stuffer, but I think we passed that season. Maybe it won't come out till the holiday season again.
It'll be out still for the holidays, yeah, hopefully.
Then we got another video game inspired one, Stellaris Infinite Legacy. This is another big campaign one based on the Stars video game. I know there was a lot of interesting controversy about it when first released on crowdfunding and stuff, so we'll see how this is released and how it's received, especially compared to the other. It is a big market in terms of the big expansive space games. That's not one that board games have shied away from.
That's certainly true.
Tapestry, it's got a new expansion. We did a video on it. You can check it out. Art and Architecture. It's one that we actually liked a lot, partially because it acknowledges the art and stuff, but it also does some really cool things and giving some more ideas. And I'm curious what it also signals for the future of Tapestry as well. Then if this is one I should have been surprised, but I was surprised when we were looking at this list, and that's Terraforming Mars, the dice game. We've already played the card game. It made my top list, but they have a new dice game. We don't know much other than Jonathan being like, do we really need another one?
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about Ares Expedition, but clearly they are passionate. They've done 18 expansions for Terraforming Mars, and they also did a big box. And they're like, we have nowhere else to go. We have to make new games. So that's what they've decided as spin-offs. But maybe it'll be fun. I don't know.
Maybe the prequel, Terraforming Mars, Terraforming Earth.
Oh, Terraforming. Yeah, just move to a new planet. Well, they did add other planets in the expansions. But anyway, so that's coming out. Believe it or not, folks, we are almost at the end of this list. So bear with us.
We're at T now?
We're at T. Oh yeah,
T.
we're at T. Yes, we're at T. Chai T for 2. That was earlier. The next game is from Restoration Games again, and it's Thunder Road Vendetta. Sorry, I just started combining 2 different Restoration games. Thunder Road Vendetta, which is their kind of Mad Max style car racing game where you're blowing each other up. There's helicopters you're calling in. Really cool, weird, fun, wacky game. We got to try the prototype, and it's neat.
This is perfect for anyone out there who just loves to see crazy stuff happen. It can be hilarious to be like, oh, I bumped into you, but now we caused an explosion there and did this. It totally captures that sort of wild, crazy race that you see in things like Mad Max or maybe other like more like item throwing crazy racing video games.
Yeah, for sure. What's the one? Twisted Metal, I guess.
Yeah,
maybe.
well, that was more of a battle, but same idea.
Sort of. I don't know.
Hey, you're trying to kill each other.
Yeah, you sure are. Next up is Tidal Blades: Rise of the Unfolders. I don't know what that Rise of the Unfolders. Anyway, that's fine. They can title whatever they want. This will be hopefully coming out this year, as with everything else, and it's the sequel to the original Tidal Blades, which was real popular, and you got to play it. I didn't.
Yeah, I have the Tidal Blades, and I love it, and I'm really loving this idea. This goes again with the part 1 and 2, but it's not really the same in the campaign story, because the other one is just a game in which you're playing and gathering resources. It's not but it continues the story of it, in which you learn after these people, the characters have become Tidal Blades, the same characters you loved before. I know I was partial to Axel, these sort of this salamander. I can't remember the exact name, and I'm really excited to see how she appears here. And this one, I believe, is a deck builder now. So this reminds me a bit more like Role Player, in which they have like the universe there, but so many different game styles.
Yeah. Well, that'll be one to pick up. I know that's a very popular series for sure. Now we have Townsfolk Tussle to talk about. And this one is kind of inspired by old like 30s and 40s cartoons, but it's also got a tactical board where you're placing all kinds of minis and there's different bosses you can go up against. I always look at it and think it looks like the video game Cuphead, but it's not officially associated, but it sort of has some of that flavor to it, and you're getting different gear and using it against enemies in cool ways.
Some reason in my head, the way you said unofficially associated means like, like there will be a Cuphead expansion coming once that deal's.
Yeah, there's probably going to be a Cuphead board game. I mean, I wouldn't.
Is there not one already?
There is one. There is a Cuphead board game already, actually. Yeah, that's true. Anyway, then we have Truevang Legends. This is another one of those big miniatures narrative campaign games. This one's from Simon, I believe, or they're called Simon again now, I think. And it's minis, it's narrative. There's all new special ways they've come up with for you to affect the world and change things in your environment. And then again, back to Restoration Games, there's going to be, of course, more Unmatched sets this year. In particular, I know the Marvel sets are going to be probably their biggest release. There's 2 or 3 of them coming out, including Redemption Row with Daredevil and other characters. So if you want more Unmatched, I don't think they're showing any sign of slowing down on that front.
Going back to our theme of like old school cartoons, we've got Vagrant Song. This is based in the black and white style, but a very darker theme. You are all people who have hopped onto a train for whatever your character's story, be it they're trying to find something, run away. And this train is pretty haunted. You will have to fight your way through bosses and try to hold on to your humanity as you discover what's been going on with this train and see if you can stop it or maybe work for it. I don't know how it's going to end, but really cool concept. And of course, the art style is something that goes back to that 30s, 20s Cuphead.
Yeah, we'll just call it Cuphead now. That's a genre.
Yeah, that's the genre now. Then we've got Vampire the Masquerade chapters. There are a lot of Vampire the Masquerade games out right now. Nothing wrong against that. This one's a bit more of those heavy RPG campaign story elements. So we don't know too much about that, but it's in the world. It's a very cool world. It's one where I'm actually disappointed in the video game era. It just seems like I think the company that's making it, all these things keep happening, keeps getting delayed or pushed, and a lot of bad signs.
But we certainly have the tabletop world making up for it. That's for sure.
Thank you for the cardboard world. Then Verdant is coming out. This is for all the plant lovers out there, maybe those who want to be plant lovers but keep killing their house plants. It's all about making sure you collect sets and combine the plants and making sure you get the most points. Then we've got Vivid Memories. This is a way to connect with your inner childhood. It's a really interesting game because you are playing and trying to match different colors and patterns along this sort of, for lack of a term, like a brain, connecting different paths allow you to unlock memories or evolve them. it's very interesting in what it has to offer.
It's a very interesting, kind of an abstract game, but with a cool theme on top of it that we will be playing soon for ourselves. Then we have a big one, Wayfarers of the South Tigris, right? That's how you say it. Anyway, this is the start of the next trilogy that is coming after all of the Raiders games and the Paladins game and that line. And this one takes place in Baghdad. You're going to be trying to advance your civilization. You're, finding new technology, new resources, all that kind of stuff. The same type of deep gameplay that you've come to love and expect, I think, from those designers. Weather Machine is one from Vital Lacerda. So if you know him, you know this is going to be a very big, complicated game. We're all building, competing, crazy experiments and machines that will affect the weather, worker placement, and a million other things going on with a lot of different boards and variations there. Wise Guys is coming out from Gale Force 9, I was going to say a mafia-themed game, but it's the 1920s gangster kind of mafia game where you're on speakeasies and you're trying to get around prohibition, all that stuff. Appears to be a reskin, we think, of their old Sons of Anarchy game, but now it's with an original IP just based around your general kind of bootlegging 20s stuff. And then our last game that we're going to talk about in alphabetical order is The Witcher Old World. Based on the video game series, this one takes place before that series. You're all playing as different Witchers from different houses or schools, maybe they're called, competing to fight monsters and be the best Witcher you can be.
Yeah, so this is definitely...
Was that enough for you? Do you want more?
There are definitely more coming out, maybe more that we don't even know about.
Yeah, there's always going to be more announcements throughout the year and more Kickstarters.
Yeah, and that's not including the obvious expansion. We said some expansions, but I'm sure there'll be more champions. Every TCG will have new sets coming out.
Of course.
Other surprises, depending how the year goes, Gen Con, we know Fantasy Flight may drop something new and sudden that we don't know anything about.
Yeah, and again, I will stress probably 50% of these games will not come out this year. This is our list of games we're excited about, but I'll also encourage you to lower your expectations, and then you won't be so disappointed.
In terms of them coming out, not the
be happy if you get to play anything new this year, because there is just a lot going on.
If you get to finish those campaigns.
Yeah, I'm going to be delighted if something doesn't come out. It means, I have more time to finish something before the next game. But there's obviously no shortage of stuff, although it does seem like a lot of these games are things that should have been released last year, but that might mean that this year ends up being extra awesome because all those delayed games now are going to be packing up the year. So
it's going to be interesting to watch too, because we still haven't unfortunately gotten out of the sort of supply crunch that you've been hearing about, and what games will come over, especially for these bigger box games, how they're going to do it. So it's something we're going to keep an eye out, and of course, stay tuned because we'll probably talk about it. And of course, we played a lot of these because we got to do trials or the digital versions of them, and we had a lot of great times with a lot of these.
Yeah.
What would be if you had to pick one that you're most excited about?
For me, I feel like it's
and let's cut out any of them that we've already said like 3 times or something.
Oh, you mean in years past?
Yes.
There's 2 I think that I have to pick, and the first one is Cantaloupe, and the second one is Jurassic World. I think those are the 2. And there's maybe other ones. I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting, but those are the 2 immediately I'm most excited to play.
I'm afraid you would say that because those are ones I
I think we're clearly in the same camp there. And I think some of these also, like some of the more complex Euro games, aren't always the ones I get excited about, but I think when I end up playing them, they will have the tendency to wow me more.
I am excited about the father one coming from
My Father's Work.
Yes,
yeah.
I think I'm really curious to see how that turns out and how that plays. All of these I'm really excited. I'm excited if I can get any of these in the table and get a chance to play all these. I still want to. Honestly, almost the campaign ones outside. I know I'd mentioned Jurassic World that I love, but I'm excited for the ones where I don't have to worry about the player group and just like whoever comes, we can play this.
Yeah, and anytime that happens, it's a blessing. Obviously, again, we already said, but Oathsworn, I've been really excited about for a long time. All the Beyond Humanity games, Chaosmos and Hair of the Dog. Those are like the more under the radar ones that I'm excited for. I'm not going to recap the whole list, but
now we read from the bottom up.
Yeah, let's go back through it. Let us know if you're watching this in the comment section. A, which games are you most excited for? And B, which games do you anticipate might not make it this year?
And let us know if there are ones that we missed that should have been put on here. Is there an obvious glaring mistake that we somehow missed?
I bet there are a few. I bet you'll come up with some that you can tell us about.
I'm sure we'll come up with some after like an hour later and be like, oh, yeah.
That'll happen.
But I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Till then, I'm Will.
I am Jonathan.
And this has been Roll for Crit. Happy 2022.
Thanks for watching. While you're here, why don't you like the video, subscribe to our channel for more content, or you can check us out on Patreon, where if you support us, there are a lot of cool goodies like posting in our Discord channel. We've also got a podcast you can listen to. We have weekly guests, lots of board game discussion. Check that out as well.